everyone. My name is Hady Raphael, and today on the show, the Big O Theater of Magic, as Kyoto gives Montreal its first win of the season. The Canadian women's national team continues its fight for equal pay and against Canada Soccer. CONCACAF unveils the first W Gold Cup, and John Herdman unveiled his squad ahead of CONCACAF Nations League doubleheader. That and a lot more on episode 123 of The Ball is Round. What a win for Montreal yesterday night, this Saturday, and another magic moment in the Big O. Eve, how was it watching that game in Montreal at home?
Elias.
What did you think?
You could not have asked for a better homecoming for this Montreal side, really. I'm just going to kind of move my system here because I realize now that everyone has the sun in their eyes. Sorry. You could not have asked for a better homecoming, truly. I think for the fans in the seats, they definitely got some bang for their buck with their ticket money. It was thrilling. It was wild. It had all the emotions that we are accustomed to experiencing at the Big O.
Yeah, and Elias, no cheering in the press box, right? But
No, God
I
forbid.
screamed my heart out when he scored that goal at the last minute. I don't know. We weren't sitting together, but I don't know how was your reaction. Mine was like, ah!
We had very different reactions because I had written the article again, my articles are due at full time, or as close to full time as humanly possible, right? So I had written the article as a loss, and then O'Ford scored the equalizer, so I had to rewrite a decent chunk of my article. And then I see the VAR run to the monitor, and I'm like, oh, whenever they run to the monitor, it's never good. So I started writing it as a loss again, and then that was confirmed. And then he runs back to the monitor, and I was like, oh my God, don't tell me I have to rewrite it. And then he allows the goal again. So I start rewriting my article as a draw. And then as I'm almost finished, I hear a bunch of people yelling, and I look up just in time to see Chouinard's ball reach Kyoto's head, and he scores. And part of me had a tough time understanding what just happened because of the fact that I was looking down, so I didn't really know what was going on. And then it hit me, I have to rewrite it again. So that was the first thing that went through my head. Not the, oh my God, they scored. Not the, oh my God, they won. Not the, oh my God, I can't believe what I've just seen, and it's the last minute. It's Olympic Stadium. What do you expect? The only thing that went through my mind is, I'm going to be late. Oh my God. Because that was definitely the most hectic game I've ever covered in my life. And it's only right that, the first game that Montrealers have to watch this season is a proper MLS game with all kinds of twists and turns and shenanigans and drama and obviously last minute goals. So it was all in all, it's exactly what I wanted from a home opener. So I was thrilled and I'm thrilled for the Montreal fans that, got to witness and got to just yell their hearts out.
Yeah, so the joys of being a journalist that has a deadline at final whistle. For those that didn't know, that's the job, right? I'm so happy that I don't have to submit an article at the end of each game because that would ruin it for me. But you know what? I'm pretty sure that you enjoyed it still. And I'm pretty sure
wouldn't
that
trade it for anything in the world.
I'm pretty sure also that all the listeners enjoyed it. I hope that you were all at the stadium because you couldn't miss that game. Around 23,000 people. And that was really good, right, Eve?
Third highest of the week in MLS. So very good.
No, overall, I consider that to be really good attendance. Obviously, building off good momentum built up last season with so many sellouts to wrap up Stade Saputo. But obviously, with the 0 goals, 0 wins coming into this, as well as all the turnover within the team, I was honestly really surprised for the attendance number to be as high as it was. Pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, exactly. It's always nice to see such an attendance at the Big O. Now, the lower bowl was not filled, but it's still
No.
very, very nice. Knowing all the losses, the players that left, and the fact that we're rebuilding with the young core and everything, I really like how the fans responded. And like you said, yeah, of course, the results of last year helped a lot for sure. And I'm pretty sure that this kind of game at the Big O is gonna be very good for the future games and for the future attendances, right?
Well, you certainly can't have the folks saying soccer, there's no goals in soccer. It's not exciting.
Soccer is boring.
Exactly.
Exactly. So yeah, so let's start discussing that game and analyzing that game, if we can analyze, because it's a pretty tough game to analyze. First minute and a few seconds into the game, great pass behind the defense from Victor Wanyama to Elias Lapalainen that was on the right hand side of the pitch this time as a right wing back. Lassie crosses it low to Mathieu Chouanière that shoots it. We see a deflection. Honestly, live, I didn't see anything. I couldn't really realize anything. And then we realized that it was a deflection off the arm of a Union defender. And it's called a penalty. And who other than Romel Kyoto to convert it? What a great start of the game, right, Elias?
It could not have gone better, right? And I'm kind of like you, where I didn't see it as a penalty because of our angle. We're sitting pretty high up, but Mathieu Chouanière immediately turned towards the ref. You kind of see Glesnes freeze up a little bit because he knows what happened, and the ref blew the whistle immediately. So there really wasn't much of a debate surrounding whether or not it was a handball. And so I think that kind of sold it. And I think that everyone reacting that way immediately, I was like, oh, okay, this is an actual handball. This is, without a doubt. But just the tempo and the energy they started with was so promising. And you could tell that, just being at home was such a boost. They had other good moments throughout the first three games, but you could tell that this was different. This was a lot more organic. This is a lot more generated by the crowd. And like you said, Lassie on the right was just a breath of fresh air.
Oh my God.
It's not a coincidence that the first game he plays at right wing back is his best game of the year by a factor of like a million. He looked so much more comfortable, and he looked like he was, an actual right-footed player playing on his strong side.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yves, Lassie on the right. Should we see a repeat of that?
I mean, I think Herrera would still be a starter. Obviously, he was brought in for a not inconsequential sum of allocation money in the season. I'm kind of still inclined to lean towards him. However, obviously, he is injured for a little bit, so perhaps Lassie can fill his boots.
Yeah, exactly. So perhaps Lassie can fill the boots, like you said, and Aaron Herrera is the starting right back. Should be the starting right wing back for CF Montreal. But it's very, very interesting to see that Lassie is able to fill that role pretty well. Now on the left hand side, and we will discuss it a bit further, but Mathieu Chouanière was a left wing back. Let's talk about the starting 11, and I didn't talk about it. So it was Jonathan Sirois in goal. As central defenders, Joel Waterman as a right center back, Rudy Camacho as a center back in the middle of the three, and Kamal Miller as a left center back. You had Lassie Lapalainen as a right wing back, Mathieu Chouanière as a left wing back. In the middle of the pitch, you had Rida Zuhir and Victor Wanyama. Up front, you had Nathan Saliba and then Mason Toy, Romel Kyoto, that were sitting as the two strikers on that game. Of course, it changed a bit. At one time, it was three in the middle and not one playing higher up. We've seen Zuhir and Saliba be close to each other sometimes, so it changed a bit during the game. What did you think about that starting 11, Elias? It was a pretty it was a bit unusual to see Rida Zuhir and Nathan Saliba get the start together. First time that it happens this season.
Yeah, Olivier Renard kind of warned that due to injuries, there'd be a pretty surprising starting 11, and I think that they delivered on a pretty surprising starting 11. Um, I, I even last year I loved Rida Zouir. I mean, it was
Yeah,
impossible
same.
to deny how good Ishmael Kone was, and that he kind of won out that battle. It was very obvious just how good he was playing. But Rida Zouir, even yesterday, was the perfect counterpart to Victor Wanyama when Samuel Piet isn't healthy. He did all the dirty work. He did all the running. He broke lines, and he was a perfect complement to Wanyama. That being said, and this is with no fault to Saliba, but Saliba does well in a three-man midfield if he has people to play off of. But he was kind of either left on his own as a 10, which is starting to show very clearly that it is not his natural position, or he had to do a lot of the running with the ball, and he gave it up a number of times. And I don't think that Hernando Sara has found the right spot for him yet, and I don't think that Saliba has found the right spot. And he says it a lot when he speaks to the media, he speaks to the press. I could play wherever. It's fine. I like playing like this, but I play wherever. No, you have to find something that works. You can't just go on playing. I could play wherever for the entire season, because it's going to have a lot of performances like that where he has good moments, but the bad moments really stick out. And last night was the same
really
thing where his
hurts.
giveaway
Yeah.
to the first goal, it was 30 seconds in, right? Against
We're
Austin, it
going to
was the
talk
same
about
issue.
that a bit later. We're going to
When we
talk
get
about
later,
that a
yes.
bit later, Elias.
But
let's
remember
talk
2
about.
weeks ago, his giveaway against Austin. That's
Yeah.
stuff like that sticks out. And again, that comes with youth and experience. You'll get it. But you need a proper 10 in that team, and they showed it, because their best moments in the first 3 games of the season came when they had a proper 10, be it Ahmed Hamdi, be it even Sunusi Ibrahim dropping in and playing as a 10 of sorts. Sean Rea is obviously probably poised to be this year's breakout star, but you need somebody that's comfortable operating in that state of limbo almost. And Nathan Saliba shows that not yet, at least, is he ready for that kind of ambiguity in a position.
But he doesn't have the creativity to be a number 10 either way. So he's not a number 10. He can play as a number 8. He can play as a number 6, maybe, but he's not a number 10. That's clear. Even if he's young and everything, he's never going to be a number 10. It's not his game. So yeah, I agree with that. Eve, anything to add on the number 10 position? I know that Patrick has just sent a comment saying, got dominated in the midfield. I am convinced that a DP number 10 would transform this team. Rhea and Saliba would be better served coming off the bench. They are not ready to be starters. What do you think about all that, Eve?
Yeah, I completely agree with not 100% sure about a DP10, but maybe a more established, playmaker. That being said, I do agree that Rhea and Saliba would be better served coming off the bench. That's a really typical role for players in their first pro experiences, and it's to ease them into that experience of playing at the highest level of their lives. And unfortunately, needs must right now with all the injuries this team has, and I think that's something worth discussing on its own as well. That they are being asked to do a lot more of the heavy lifting than I think anybody would have wanted to ask of them preseason.
Yeah, I completely agree. We'll see DP number 10. I think it's, the club made it clear that it's not in the cards to have a DP right now, and maybe later, maybe in a summer window or something like that. But right now, I don't think that anybody, I don't think that someone's coming, like a DP caliber player will be coming anytime soon. We'll talk about the first part of the question a bit later down the show. Let's continue the analysis of that game. 9th minute, Mason Toy almost scored the goal of the season, and maybe a pushcast contender across the globe with an overhead kick that went just wide. That would have been awesome. Eve, when you saw that, you're like, is it the rebirth of Mason Toy?
Well, I'm not going to be, I think, super kind in this one. It's basically a continuation of last season, almost scoring. So for me, you can be as acrobatic as you want, but unfortunately, if the ball doesn't go in the net, then it winds up being kind of like a wet fart.
Wow.
Sorry,
Wow.
I appreciate it.
Guys, you just
you know
heard
how I
Eve.
feel about what have been, should have been, could have.
We can't really hear you well, Eve. I don't know what's going on with your internet connection. We can't really hear you well. So I don't know if you wanna go out and come back again or something like that, because like you're jumping a lot. Sorry about that. Elias, yeah, Eve is amazing. We love it. We love her. We love her her direct takes. And I agree with Gail saying close doesn't count. I completely agree. But you have to show some sort of confidence to try this kind of shot, right? So do you think that we're going to see a better version of the Mason Toy that we've seen last year?
I don't think he played poorly last night. I think he did okay. He didn't really stand out all that much, except for obviously that opportunity that was an insane try. But yeah, like you said, it takes confidence, right? Someone who's down on their luck or someone who's not really feeling themselves is not going to try a shot like that. So you could tell that he really took this starting assignment challenge to head, and he said, okay, I'm going to make the most out of what is my only opportunity so far. And so he really approached it with, I am going to do, I'm going to get somebody's attention by any means necessary. And I understand that kind of mentality because of the fact that, again, he's had no minutes so far this season. He hasn't even come off the bench, if I'm not mistaken. So in a situation like that, you start shooting from everywhere. And I like that kind of attitude, especially because Montreal is a team that kind of is known for passing up shots. So look, it got everybody on their feet and it got everybody excited. And I think that, again, if that went in and if, then yes, we'd be sitting here talking about something completely different than, oh, how cool would it have been, right? We'd be sitting here talking about potential Puskás winners. Like
Exactly. But you know what? At least we saw something from him, because
we saw some kind of life.
Exactly, because in the last few outings we didn't see much of Mason Toy. So at least there's that. But you know what? Someone else that could have made a mark very early in that game, even a deeper mark in that game, is Ramel Kyoto. He did receive a great pass at one point, and I don't know why he was a bit too quick. And he just controlled it not really well, and just shot it like completely wide. He had all the time in the world to really control it and take a really precise shot, and he didn't do that. How important was that action for CF Montreal?
I was really concerned because there were a couple of chances in the first half that Kyoto had missed. And I know, we saw the new turf in action, and I think the turf didn't necessarily help a whole lot, because I think we did see on several occasions the ball kind of died en route. And so, I'm not 100% sure if that may have factored into some of his errant shots. But as the first half went on and Kyoto missed a couple of chances that we would have been accustomed to see him score in the past, I became concerned with a capital C, because I said, this Philly team is not going to take this lying down. They will come out with the knife between their teeth the second half. Well, they proved me right, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. They did prove you right. But Elias, anything else to add on that Kyoto chance?
I think he didn't expect to create that much space when he eventually shoved off of his defender. I think someone probably should have told him, or at least communicated.
Oh, you're too nice, man. Come on, it's about Kyoto. He knows he's going to create space. Oh, you're too nice.
But the thing is, I don't think he expected to create that much space, because you could tell, because he didn't look back. He just took one step and let it fly, right? So I think if maybe someone would have communicated that he had that much more space, because again, the beautiful communicating, sharing information with your teammate is, even if they're already aware, you're just reinforcing it. So worst case scenario, they already know it. So you just have to let someone know, you have time, and maybe take a beat, settle the ball, pick your head up and pick your spot, right? Because again, they go up 2-0, like 15, 20 minutes in, then it's a completely different game. So again, it's nice, but hey, he's got 2 goals at least, so it's not like it's a fourth straight game without a goal, and then now they're really in their own heads, right? At least they can still breathe.
Yeah, he redeemed himself. I completely understand. I could completely agree with
More
that.
than redeemed himself, yeah.
Now that was like the first 25, 30 minutes. I think that Montreal was the better team on the pitch. And it was clear a lot of chances for CF Montreal. Philadelphia didn't seem like itself at all. But you know what? After the 25th or maybe the 30th minute, that's when the Union started to be very menacing. And Sirois stood tall. First of all, the first time around the 42nd minute on a shot from Alejandro Bedoya. Yes, it wasn't very hard to parry for Jonathan Sirois, but still he had to be there. A few minutes later, Julian Carranza tried at the near post to score, and Jonathan Sirois did put the ball in the corner. And on the following corner, just before halftime, Michael Ure tried to score, and Jonathan Sirois was able to handle the ball. How important was Jonathan Sirois at the end of the first half, Eve?
Amazing. Like phenomenal. I was impressed. He was commanding. He was alert. It was everything I have wanted to see in a Montreal goalkeeper for the past couple of years.
Yeah, so yeah. Is he winning the number 1 spot for you, Elias, or do you think that he's still behind James Pantemis, or is it too early to say still?
It's still too early to say. I think if Pantemis returns today, he keeps the number 1 spot. Again, I'm a big purveyor of the concept of going with the hot hand when it comes to goalies, but I'm an even bigger supporter of having a designated starter. You have a number 1 goalie, and then you have, your backup, right? And that may change over the course of the season.
Yeah.
But you need to have a clear and set hierarchy for your team, because or else then it's a bit all over the place, and then you're kind of left in this position of limbo, and it's and I don't know, and then I guess we can go with this player. No, you need to have a number 1 goalie, and you need to have a backup. The fact that Jonathan Sirois was playing this well and making that decision a little bit more complicated is only good news, right? It's not like both goalkeepers are playing or are at a level where you're like, it's picking the lesser of 2 evils. No, you have someone who's internationally capped, and you have Jonathan Sirois who's playing, some of the best goaltending of his life. So this is a good problem to have. But I want to talk kind of about the fact that he kept his calm in front of the crowd. And he was talking about it after the game where he was buzzing. And this is something you dream about since you're a little kid. And anybody who plays any sport knows that playing at the highest level and having the crowd go nuts for you and you coming up big that's what you jokingly recreate as a little kid when you're like, 5 seconds left. What a save by Sirois, right? That's what you dream of. So the fact that he didn't have a bead of sweat on his face, and he was completely in tune with the moment, was such an impressive characteristic that someone his age has no right being that cool in that kind of moment. And so again, that is all the more credit to him, because making those saves is difficult, and making those saves is not easy, especially some of the ones that were closer range. But doing that while keeping your composure and while directing your back line in front of this crowd that's absolutely raucous is so emotionally taxing, and he still managed to pull it off, which is so impressive.
No, I agree. Although I will say it kind of comes out like I'm not 100% sure I follow you, Elias, how you can be both a proponent of the hot hand and the designated number 1, because sometimes your hot hand is not your designated number 1.
No, it's not. But I believe in having a designated number 1, and I think that's always important to have. And it's important to always have that hierarchy established.
Elias is choosing both routes, so he's never wrong, right? That's like at that point, you can never say, Elias, you know what? you were wrong, because he's saying both
I
things
still
at the
think
same
James
time, right?
Pantemis is the starting keeper, and I still think that if he comes back
Okay,
now,
you know what? One sec.
he still
Right
has that
now,
job.
tomorrow
Right now.
you have a game, CF
Tomorrow.
Montreal
Yes.
against whoever. James
Yes.
Pantemis is back. Who's your number one
Yes.
keeper?
James Pantemis.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry,
You're wrong, but thank you.
But yeah, no, I agree with you that you need to have an established hierarchy with the goalkeepers, and that's completely normal. And I completely agree with that. But right now, for me, Jonathan Sirois is the number one goalkeeper.
I think
It's
it would
as
be
simple as that.
disrespectful for what he has given to take him out of the lineup just because James Pantemis has returned.
Yeah, and you know what? What's really nice about it is that Jonathan Sirois is very young. So by playing, he's going to improve, and he's going to get better and better and better and better. So right now, you're at like not even half his potential right now, and by playing, he's going to grow into it a lot more. He's going to learn a lot more. He's going to gain experience a lot more, and he's going to become better and then surpass James Pantemis, even if right now maybe he's not 100% better than Pantemis. He would be better than Pantemis at the end of the season if he is number one. That's for sure. So yeah, very very exciting. I think to see a young goalkeeper, really being fearless in front of the net, and that's something that we haven't seen for a while. Like you said, I think Eve at the beginning of the whole discussion. Now, halftime. Eve, you're going to halftime. You're leading 1-0, but your team hasn't looked very good in the last few minutes. What do you tell your players if you are the coach? If you hire Hernan Losada, what would be your speech?
Take a really cold drink of water, slap yourselves on the face a couple of times to get back into it, because this Philadelphia team, they can grow into games. They can take over in the second half, and an experienced coach like Jim Curtin is going to be in there, rallying his troops and waking them up and adjusting little bits and pieces. So if I'm Hernan Lozada, I'm just kind of, reminding the players, like, hey, we are in front of our home fans. This is our house. We have to play like the home team, and more like the first 20 minutes of the half than like the last 25.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a way to do it. I would encourage them in a way, saying, you know what, you played so well in the first 25 minutes. I don't know what happened, but you can repeat that in a way, because it's a team that right now the morale of the team is pretty low. So you can't really go down on them at halftime in a certain way, saying, you didn't play well the last 20 minutes. I think it would be better to maybe encourage them to say, you know what, you played well in the first 25. You can do better than the last 20. But you know what, it's all a matter of perspective. And it seems that, unfortunately, Hernan Losada didn't have the right words during halftime, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But first of all, Elias, tell me about the tactical side of things. Patrick had a question, had a comment a bit earlier. The first part of the tweet of the message that he sent us, still concerning, got dominated in midfield, and that's also something that Simple Guy told us even at the end of the game, saying CF Montreal were lucky to win against Philly. The midfield has been dominated every game we have played, and it's a major concern going forward. We created no chances, even a man up, until the miracle at the very end of the game. How do we fix the midfield with our current lineup? Yes, we didn't talk about the whole game, but it's the same. It's essentially the same kind of question. Do you think we have a problem in the midfield, and how can we fix that?
Yeah, I think you have an injury problem. Let's be real here. This is not.
Love it.
This is not Montreal's starting best 11, right? This is not Montreal's best midfield. We've seen that, this combination of Rea, Piet, Wanyama, and then maybe either, if it's two attackers or one attacker, maybe a fourth midfielder in there somewhere, like Chouanière, like Zuhir, like any of the people in that depth chart, does provide a very solid midfield. And As for the getting dominating the midfield, I do have a bit of a gripe with that because remember that I feel like a lot of people are comparing this to Wilfried Nancy level of dominance where they had the ball for 65% of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember that is not the case anymore. And there will be games where they dominate the ball, right? And against Philly, I think they got high 50s level percentage of possession, right? So there will be games like that where they get the majority of the ball, but this is a much more vertical team. So when they see that, they don't control the ball for long periods of time, and then you assume that this midfield is not working as intended, that's not the case because Losada does play a much more vertical, much more direct style. And against Nashville, I feel the opposite. I feel like the attack ended up not kind of petering out, but in the midfield, they won the ball back high. They won the ball back often. They won the ball back quickly, and they did it very efficiently. And yes, they ended up losing, and it did end up working out because when you commit that many bodies forward, it bites back. Against Austin, there, yes, I will see to you. They got dominated in the midfield, and we don't talk about Miami because Miami never happened. But in the case of getting dominated in the midfield, I think that this midfield is finally starting to work as intended because you saw against Nashville when they won the ball back, these small accelerations of play where they find the line breaking pass and then it's 2 or 3 quick passes and then you go into an attack. That's how this is supposed to operate. Right? There's no more gradual build-up. You find a killer pass to the flank and then a ball into the middle. That's not how this team is going to play. There will be moments where that's used, but that's not their go-to anymore. Right? The Pistons on the flanks are just that. They're there to create width. But everything else is trying to go down the middle. Everything else is trying to go vertically now. And by the way, this is something that I was talking about last game. It's just a little tidbit. Georgia Quizera would have loved a game like this. With the openness and the flank. That, yeah. Oh my God, I was watching this game. And again, Mathieu Choinière, incredible. Man of the match. Super great.
He's really the man of the match. So that's why I don't really agree with you because he's been so
for
good.
A young, talented wingback who's injured and can enjoy an open game like this than saying, oh, we need somebody at left back because whoever's there right now isn't cutting it. Mathieu Choinière was exceptional. This is more just me thinking, I would love to have an injection of pace at some point because as the game goes on, that's where Quizera really shined last year. But back to the midfield, I don't think that they get dominated. I think that especially yesterday was more or less a ragtag midfield where they kind of just were putting pieces together and hoping it worked. And look, it did. They conceded a decent amount of possession in between the 20th minute and the 70th minute, but then again, once Carranza got sent off, the switch flipped again, and they kept their composure. There were subs made. The side of substitutes finally worked, where that quadruple substitution had an impact. And I think that overall, the midfield did its job yesterday, and the fact that they kept the energy, they kept the tempo. And they broke up play when necessary, especially when you play against a team like Philadelphia that's been at the top of the East for what now, like 4 years. This is like their 5th year as one of the best teams in the league. You have to stop the bleeding, right? And after that first goal, they kind of calmed down a bit. They kind of reasserted themselves gradually, and then again, they hit you on the counterattack, and that's something that we could talk about later because I have some issues with the way that they keep getting beat on the counterattack, and that leads back to last year. But in terms of adapting and adjusting to almost an overwhelming amount of pressure from one of the best teams in the league, I think the midfield responded brilliantly. I think that's all you can hope from a midfield that isn't really that familiar with one another.
No, it's not the first choice midfield by any stretch. Exactly. With young players out there, we have to expect the mistakes, and we have to expect them as well to be adjusting to the physicality of this league. And particularly Philly is a very physical team, and we saw an incredibly physical match last night between these two sides. So I'm not surprised that the midfield is not as dominant, whether it's in possession or whether it's just even out of possession, just keeping up with the opposition. I'm not surprised at the end of the day.
Yeah, and Victor Wanyama said something post-game, saying we have young midfielders. We do have young midfielders. They will make mistakes, but you know what? What's really important is that they're hungry and they want to learn, and they want to learn from their mistake, and they're learning from their mistakes. And down the line, they're going to improve, and they're going to become better because they want to learn and they have the ability. They're very good. They have good potential. So, hearing that from a veteran like Victor Wanyama is very encouraging because he had no hesitation whatsoever to say that. Like, he could have said, you know what, we're making mistakes, we could be better. No, he encouraged those young prospects, and I think that's very, very interesting. Now, moving on, with the game, halftime is done. Tactically, it's still kind of the same coming into the second half. And beginning of the half, not even 2 minutes.
Not even 1 minute.
Not even 1 minute. Yeah, exactly. A few seconds into the second half. Big error for Nathan Saliba. We're talking about the errors. Nathan Saliba gives the ball back to the Union team. I think it's Gazdag that gives the ball to Michael Uhre. I don't know how to pronounce it, and I know Eve is gonna get mad if I pronounce it right.
No, I'm not gonna
wrong again. So that striker, who's very, very good, scores a goal. Sirois couldn't do much because that was kind of a screen from the defender on him. 1-1. What did you think about this equalizing goal, Eve?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's what we have to live with, and I think my connection's going. So I hope that you can hear me. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. I mean, it's what we have to live with, having these young players out there. And like I said, this is part of they're being asked to do a lot more than they should be expected to do, in my opinion, starting all these matches. Some of it is by necessity, for sure. However, unfortunately, I think probably if we look at the errors made by players, unfortunately, Nathan Saliba's across several matches have been the most costly to Montreal in terms of conceding goals. So, it is kind of becoming a little bit of a concern because it is kind of a rudimentary mistake to pass centrally so close to your own box when you have the opposition right on top of you like that.
Yeah, I agree. But you know what? If you look at the mistake, he tried to play it very, very quickly. It's a mistake that's gonna happen with young players. He didn't do it's not a low IQ kind of mistake, right? It's just a mistake that comes because of lack of experience. But give him a few games, these mistakes will not happen again. I completely agree with Victor Wanyama. What do you think, Elias, regarding that mistake from Nathan Saliba?
I think that's a case of like you said, right? You grow as a player. You remember that. Sam hit the nail on the head, and that's one of the biggest reasons why I preferred Hady at the beginning of the season over Ismail Kone, because Hady made fewer of these mistakes. But as you learn, you will just naturally become more comfortable with these kinds of presses, right? And the two biggest mistakes of Nathan Saliba that stick out to everybody was the mistake against Austin that ended up not costing Montreal, and now this one. And both came pressing, right? It's not like he gave the ball away willingly for free with no press, and it was just a brain burp. This was two times where he was pressed and then tried to, play out of it, and it didn't work out. So stuff like that will go away, and it's refreshing to see one of the leaders of the team throw so much support behind the youth and throw so much support in the face of adversity, right? Because it's easy to support the youth when they're doing great and they're killing it and they're playing amazing. But when they cost you a goal, that's when they really need the support, right? That's when they really value the support of the elders, not just in the locker room, but in public, right? It's a vocal support. And he's been doing it since he's got here, and he's been doing it a lot under this kind of renewed scrutiny this season.
Yeah.
But when it
And you know
comes
what?
to
It's nice because he's standing behind the project of Olivier Renard
exactly,
and Gabriel Gervais and Hernan Lozada. And that's what's really
exactly,
interesting about it. You know, don't forget, Victor Wanyama is a guy that played the Champions League final. Like, you know, having such a player, agree to that and give his blessing to that project in a kind of way, and I love it, and I think that shows how much these players are willing to really follow the club in its vision, and I think that's going to
absolutely.
be very interesting down the line. Moving on, at the 60th minute, Martinez took the ball away from CF Montreal and served Gazdak, who then again directly, very vertically, exactly like Montreal is supposed to play, lobs the Montreal defense down the line to the one that I cannot name, who scored a brace, his second goal of the game, 2-1 lead for the Philadelphia Union. And I think that's when Eve started swearing.
No comment. No comment. When you have one striker surrounded by two central defenders, it's kind of criminal for the striker to get away and beat them both for pace. So that was pretty disappointing. Neither Joel Waterman nor Rudy Camacho are renowned for their pace, certainly. And I think it was on full display last night. It was pretty disappointing. The turnover in possession came from a Sean Reyes shot, like kind of at the top of the Philadelphia 18-yard box. And, perhaps he could have made a better choice instead of trying to take a shot with I suppose it was Martinez about 2 feet in front of him. So again, it was a bit of an individual error followed by just a collective failing that allowed a goal. And unfortunately, there was nothing Jonathan Sirois could do. He was completely at his mercy. So that's just disappointing.
I find you very tough on the young kid. Like, yes, maybe it wasn't the best decision making. I completely understand, but calling it an error, I think it's a bit of a stretch.
Okay,
in my
fair.
opinion, because there was like 4 passes afterwards, and if the pressure was applied, in the right way on those midfielders, you wouldn't have that problem.
Okay,
so
fair.
I wouldn't together the poor decision making to the goal, but I agree with you that Rhea could have chosen something else, could have done something else. Even if I think he did a pretty good he had a pretty good game when he came in.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree, and I will credit him for being willing to take the risk, even though, like you said, probably would want a little bit more cool-headedness in the decision making.
Of course, 100%. But you look at that goal, Elias, you know that your 3 center backs are Kamal Miller, Rudy Camacho, and Joel Waterman. You're going to have some pacey attackers. You're always going to have some pacey attackers. You're in MLS.
Yeah.
Who's the one that should be back there if you have that pacey attacker? And you need to have a center back that's there to catch up to that pacey attacker. Who's that? Isn't that supposed to be Miller?
I mean, Miller and Waterman are both pretty mobile, right? There's a reason that they can kind of
slow, man.
That's bold.
Waterman is deceptively quick. You'd be surprised. The problem is that Waterman is usually very well positioned and doesn't have to do that much running, right?
Yeah.
So but they were both so high.
He rarely has to stretch his legs. Eve hit the nail on the head. The issue is not with the pace. Slow center backs operate in leagues with pacey strikers all the time and find lots of success because they are positioned masterfully. This was simply a situation of them failing to see the threat until it was too late and then them being caught out, right? Because when you see a team sending each other headers 4 or 5 times, it's kind of like, that predatory fish with a dangling light bulb in front of its mouth, and it lulls you to sleep and then you're dead. It's kind of like that because they saw the headers and I maybe they just got caught ball watching, and then all of a sudden the ball falls to Gazdag, and then you're stuck having to turn 180 and run after a striker who's by no means slow, and he makes you pay for it, right? So it's kind of one of those, rather than them being too slow to keep up with a striker, them just getting caught ball watching and then being forced to kind of turn heel and run. And at that point, against a team that can counter you so quickly, you're not going to catch up. And they proved it right there that at the end of the day, it was purely a failing in positioning rather than athleticism, right? Rudy Camacho is by no means quick, but he's definitely not so slow that he'll get burned like that for pace without when he's ready, right? It was clear that they were kind of caught off guard, and that's just something that they kind of have to learn to recognize, especially as a back line gets more and more comfortable. It's just it's a simple positioning error, and it's kind of disappointing because again, that is a back line with a lot of experience, and Rudy Camacho is a veteran, and he should be able to recognize stuff like that. But it's you're watching that, and again, I think everybody was watching them play ping pong with the headers, so I think it's kind of tough to not get distracted by that. But again, the midfield line was completely broken, and they were the headers were going uncontested. Then Daniel Gazdag has all the time in the world to turn and then play the ball.
Gazdag is a wonderful player too. So
Gazdag is one of the best, is one of the most overlooked players in the league just because of how good Philly is as a unit. He is one of the most talented players in the league. And you give him all the time in the world in midfield and a pacey striker like that, he's going to make you pay every time. It's exactly what happened. It's disappointingly simple how easy it was for that to break down, and that's what Philly gets you. It's small moments of quality like that.
Exactly. And don't forget that Philadelphia midfielders altogether, Bedoya, Martinez, Gazdag, three very, very good midfielders. So very interesting to see Montreal still being able to win, to grab a win from that team with such talented players. Moving on, CF Montreal got a break at one point because Julian Carranza decided to be stupid and got himself a second yellow card. How important was that moment for CF Montreal, Eve?
You know what? The same thing happened last season, and Montreal went on to lose the match to the same player, as a matter of fact. Ironically, I don't know what he has against the Big O, but whatever. So, especially last year, we saw Montreal struggle against undermanned teams. Think back to, the loss against Austin, the loss against the Philadelphia Union. And, they did, of course, win a couple of matches as well. But especially at home, it wasn't necessarily an advantage for them. So I was kind of, mind you, Julian Carranza is a phenomenal player as well in his own right. And it's probably the steal of the recent era in MLS. However, knowing Montreal's history last year, I wasn't super excited. I won't lie. I was like, this is not necessarily advantageous. It could get worse because they have managed to screw it up in the past.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. They did manage to screw it up in the past, but you know what? This time around, they didn't because they weren't able to do much after the sending off.
No,
but
until
it all came down to Hernan Lozada and his cojones, if I may. But what a gamble he took by just doing a quadruple substitution with Sunusi coming in for Rida Zuhir, Zake Bogiach coming in for Lassi Lapalainen, Chinonso Four coming in for Mason Toy, and Robert Torkelson coming in for Miller. And that changed everything. That's when we saw CF Montreal take control of the game, take control of the box, being dangerous and being really, really dangerous in front of the net of Joe Bendik.
Yeah, no, I felt like they had an extra edge to them after these players came on. Like, I felt like they were almost playing too nice against Philly. And it's certainly a team that you absolutely have to respect, whether you're playing them at home or away. but I almost felt like they were just showing them more respect than you normally show an adversary at your home pitch. And then when these players came on, I felt like they really had that kind of grit in them and got a little bit more attitude.
Yeah, exactly. And that's when around the 90th minute, maybe 88th, 89th minute, that's when a cross came in. Mathieu Chouanière met the cross with a header that touched the crossbar and fell down to Chinonzo 4 that was able to put it at the back of the net. Now, let's just explain what happened afterwards. The goal was first given, then the VAR came in. The referee decided to overrule the decision and say that it's no goal. And right after, there was a lot of pressure of Montreal players, and we'll talk about that a bit later. Or I'll let Elias explain what happened. And then the referee went back again and checked the VAR again, and then allowed the goal that gave the equalizer for CF Montreal. Only in MLS, right?
Only in MLS.
That was so MLS. Like, I could not even. I was so everybody was just so collectively confused during those. It wound up being several minutes.
Yeah.
And it was just the most MLS thing I've ever seen. Kind of like Jim Curtin said in his post-game comments, as I saw online, that it was not really a great look for the league. And admittedly, that is the truth. It wasn't a great look from a professionalism standpoint.
Can we repeat the word that he used, or Gail is?
No, it's fine. No, it's fine.
Okay, he said it's a shit show.
Yeah, so. And then afterwards he followed it by saying it wasn't a very good look for the league.
Exactly. But Elias, explain to us what happened and what made the referee look at that a second time.
Yeah, so it's interesting because this has happened in many different situations, especially recently, where when VAR is being used to look at an offside goal, they kind of zoom in on the player, right? Because that's on the player and the back line, because you want as clear a view as possible. What that does sometimes is that it cuts out people that are out of the frame, and that's occasionally those people are actually the ones playing them offside. The most controversial one, was one where I believe Milik from Juventus was ruled offside, even though there's a whole player off screen keeping him onside, and Juve went on to lose that game.
Love it.
I forgot about
Love
that
you talk about Milik, a Marseille player, by the way.
Former Marseille player. But that's essentially
he is a Marseille player on loan to
he's currently now?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So basically, Wagner went out to confront Joel Waterman, who was playing in a cross. And those two had their own little thing. And as the attention went into the middle of the box, Mathieu Chouanière got his header. Chinonzo 4 scored. Everyone goes on and then continues as if they had scored.
And the linesman never raised his flag.
Because the linesman...
Exactly.
Either the linesman had seen Wagner or the linesman just, played as usual. But what happens is Montreal ended up complaining so much that it gave VAR time to look again and then call the official. If Montreal had taken the dismissal and said, okay, we continue, then I don't think that they call the ref back, because I think that there was enough time, there was enough of a delay for them to just look at more angles. And then they see Wagner in the corner.
Yeah.
Now, in the post-game presser, Victor Wanyama talks about everyone on the bench seeing the video and seeing the still of Wagner keeping for onside. And then they tell Wanyama, who's got the armband, to go talk to the fourth official. And then the fourth official says, he goes and tells the fourth official, you need to go review this. And the fourth official says, okay. That's where the big concern is. You cannot have a player requesting a VAR review. Now, this is most likely purely coincidental, and the VAR officials are going to call the ref to the monitor anyway. It's just that the timing maybe led Wanyama to believe
that he influenced it.
That he influenced it. I think that Pro needs to maybe release a statement to kind of
Yeah.
just reinforce that, because of the fact that this is an incredibly dangerous precedent to set if you're having any team player or captain or
Mhm.
any member of a team, be it coach, staff, player, anything, physio, janitor, I don't care.
Okay.
If they influence the review process, then all of a sudden it's casting doubt onto the whole thing,
Yeah.
and it hurts the legitimacy of the process.
No, I agree.
So
I fully expect to see a statement for this one. I
yeah,
totally
I
do.
hope so. Just to
Yeah, it's
clarify,
gonna
and
happen.
it's absolutely a non-story, because I think that's just a case of the two storylines lining up, and that just it makes it
Mhm.
seem like that. But you have to do it purely just for to keep appearances and to maintain the legitimacy of it, right?
I,
Because then you're
I
gonna have all the people saying, "Oh, Wanyama asked for it," and then they kind of did
I
Montreal a
agree.
favor.
I agree. But the storyline behind that, and what I wanted to make sure we underline, is the fact that Wanyama praised the coaching staff because they have new technology that was able to realize that there was a mistake on that play. And that's something for me that's very, very interesting, because when you praise your coaching staff, those behind the scenes that are the unsung heroes in a certain way. And I think that's important. It shows some sort of unity within the team. And I think that's important to understand and to highlight on our show, that it looks like everybody has a part to play in that team, and that's really interesting. And I don't know who showed and who realized that. I have my doubts, and a lot of people are pointing to Luan Schlicht, who's the video analyst, video analyst of the team, which is awesome. So I just wanted to point out that the team has new technology, has the right support, the technological support, but not only that, but the unity within the team to overcome such decisions and make it count in a certain way. And I love it. I love the fact also that the referees, some referees would have said, you know what, no, I'm not going to go back. I already checked.
Mhm.
Let's start the game. Let's start back the game. I don't want to hear it. And I think that's important, that the referee was smart enough to listen and to go check to make sure that he took the right decision. And you know what? At the end of the day, it wasn't the right decision, and he made sure to give the right decision.
Mhm.
And good for Montreal. Um, right after the big magic of the Big O, Victor Wanyama heads the ball back to Mathieu Choinière once again with an amazing cross to Romel Kyoto that shoves his defender and scores a header, I think at the 97th
It
minute.
was 98th according to the math.
98. Yeah, because
Yeah.
97 and a few seconds means 98
Yeah, exactly.
on the scoreboard. So yeah, 98th minute. What a game. How were your neighbors, Eve?
I have really thick concrete walls, so they're good.
Okay.
They're good. Yeah. They don't hear my reactions to matches anymore. Thank goodness. So they were safe. They were safe. Although my window was open, so maybe.
Oosh. Oosh.
No. I mean, it was like you could not have written a better story. Obviously, there are more monumental events that have happened at the Big O. Like, this is not even the biggest moment that's ever happened, but especially in the context of how the season has gone so far, it felt pretty darn massive.
Yeah, it was very massive. I think it's important for the team to get their first points, but also to get their first win. That's going to make them, that's going to relax them in a certain way, and they're going to be able to train with a lot more confidence this week before the next game. I think that's going to be very, very important for that team, right, Elias?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many questions and so many concerns. When are you going to get your first win? When is it time to hit the panic button? Stuff like that, and they kind of kept to themselves, the entire team, and the team always stayed optimistic. So this is good. This is a good way to pay back that optimism and pay back that composure, because you did it against one of the best teams in the league. And again, this is not, you did not oops your way into this. Granted, it was last minute, but this was on merit. They played a very good game, and they responded brilliantly to the events of the match. Right, so it's not like, they parked the bus for 90 minutes and oops and eked out one lucky goal and then let themselves get completely run over and then somehow managed to come away with a win. Right, this was on merit. They were down 2-1, they fought back, and then they went out and they found the winner. So this is an incredible endorsement of just the mindset. And again, last year, one of the biggest things was the fact that this team were mentality monsters.
Yeah.
Nothing would phase them. They would go into opposing team stadiums, into the most hostile environments in MLS, collect the 3 points, and walk away as if they hadn't done anything big at all. Right? So this team that was seemingly unfazed kind of showed their colors again. It kind of showed flashes of that again last night.
Yeah.
And it was very, very impressive to watch that side of them come out again. And I hadn't seen that side since they beat Columbus on the road with that comeback win last season. And
I'm trying to think.
That was the last time I saw, in terms of, just being dealt a really crap hand and then making the most out of it. It was refreshing to see that kind of CF Montreal return. Because remember, we made a big deal out of the fact that, yes, some key pieces left, but this is largely the same group. And that group mentality showed itself again. We hadn't seen that for all 3 games. We had seen 3 games of a team that was kind of still struggling to find itself and still unsure of where its standing was in the league. And last night, the team said, that's enough. We are still largely returning one of the best teams in MLS, and we're going to show why. And that was exactly the case. And that's 3 incredibly valuable points.
That's a big
bold
statement,
take.
man. Very, very
Yeah.
big statement.
I'm like
sorry,
sweating a
but
little bit here.
Even without Georgi Mihailovic, this team was one of the best in MLS. And Georgi Mihailovic is arguably the biggest loss. So this team that did not have all their pieces, right? And even some of the pieces, like Kamal Miller, wasn't supposed to play tonight. Wasn't supposed to play last night.
Yeah, he had an awful game, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
he looked miserable, but he still put in 75 minutes, and that left flank was essentially locked down. Right, there was very little progress made through that the defensively left through Philadelphia's right side. Very little meaningful progress, because him and Mathieu Choinière worked wonderfully together. And so the
second goal came.
The second goal was a team effort, right? We can agree on that.
True, but he came on that right side of Philadelphia, but yeah.
But that's the point, right? Where this ragtag team kind of put together, and this is a full strength Philly side, and they beat this team on merit. And I think that is an incredible. They showed what their ceiling is.
Okay.
Last night.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see. There's a lot of games left in the season.
Eve, one last question for you on CF Montreal. I know there's now the international break, but let's say there wasn't the international break and there was a game in the last 5 days. What would be your starting 11? We've seen very different starting 11s. We know that Samuel Piet is injured, Matko Miljevic is injured, James Pantemis is injured. That stays the case for the next game. What will be your starting 11?
Okay, well, not a huge fan of the hypotheticals because there is no game, but I know. Well, Jonathan Sirois would certainly start. I would still give the start to Kamal Miller, assuming he is actually fit for a game, because yes, one mediocre game out of him. Everyone's entitled to one. Rudy Camacho, Joel Waterman, certainly. If Aaron Herrera was not fit, I would start Lassi Lapalainen on the right flank. I thought he was much better. I don't think that Zach Broguillard had enough of an impact to dislodge him. Even depending on the opposition, maybe let Georges Cruzera have a look in, because that was a good point that Elias made, I think. Otherwise, though, start Mathieu Choinière at the left flank, because it certainly did not go badly for him against Philly. In the midfield, I think overall, our preference would always be, I think, Wanyama Piet. But again, if Piet is injured, I think Zuhir was probably the most stable presence next to Wanyama so far this season. So I would roll with him. I'm still partial to Sean Rea, so I would start Sean Rea beneath. They're really similar profiles. Ramel Kyoto, obviously, but I kind of would like to start Chinonso 4 as well. I thought he was that's the thing. I think they have similar profiles, so I'm not super into the idea, but he was definitely the most impactful striker aside from Ramel Kyoto that we've seen so far this season.
I agree with your starting 11, but you know what? I would change just one thing. For me, Mathieu Chouanière is a starting left wing back right now because of that game that he played. Guys, he's involved in the 3 goals of CF Montreal. He got the penalty, he got the header off the bar, and also gave the assist on the third one. So for me, Mathieu Chouanière is a left wing back, and Aaron Herrera is a right wing back, and Lassie Lapalainen is on the bench. As simple as that. But I agree with you. Wanyama Zuhir in the middle, Sean Rea just up front. And I would like to see 04 and Kyoto up front, even if I would also like to see Toy and Kyoto again, because I think that Toy's time is coming. I have that feeling that he is going to be back in a certain way to his best form because he's not a bad player. I still haven't given up on him.
No.
Yeah. So Elias, do you agree with Eve and I, or do you have a different opinion?
No, I mean current fitness. I think that that's the best starting 11 you could put together. I think that 04 has come off the bench, and every single time he's impressed.
Yeah.
I had some concerns about profiling whether or not him and Kyoto would kind of step on each other's toes. But what 04 parking himself in the penalty area does is it gives Kyoto kind of the freedom to just travel and just go wherever the music takes him, because he does like doing that sometimes. And when you play with a striker who isn't as pure number 9, if you will, sometimes Kyoto is locked into that target man role, and he doesn't get to kind of float around as much as he'd like. But if you have someone like Chinonso 4, who is one of the most physically imposing players in MLS, like he comes into the league and immediately is an aerial threat, and he's confident with the ball at his feet. He's got loads of match fitness because he played in Belgium. You just let Kyoto do whatever he wants, and then he can go in. He can make some plays, make some combinations. He wants to run back post like he loves to do. He can run back post. If he doesn't want to run back post, he doesn't have to. So it gives him these options to kind of just play the way he wants to play. And having a happy and free Romel Kyoto is of infinite value to this club. So I think that 04 has not only deserved and earned a shot as a starter, I think it could also bring out something new in Kyoto, which would be just as lethal.
No, that's a good point. Really good point, because he is pacey on the sides as well, Kyoto, so he has more to his profile. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be interesting to see the future of the CF Montreal after the break, the international break. So next game for CF Montreal will be in Vancouver. So Whitecaps Montreal on the 1st of April, so on April's Fool. So hopefully we'll be able to get our first win on the road, or maybe make it tough on the Whitecaps, who are having a very good beginning of the season, and they have a very talented squad this year. So
Champions League run brewing too. So
exactly. They do have Champions League. So for CF Montreal, I think that's 8. Moving on now to the Canadian women's national team. A lot has happened since the last pod. We are going to cover all the woes of the Canadian women's national team.
The woes.
Oh, no. But yeah, exactly. So go ahead, Eve. You're going to be the one talking through everything that happened with the women's national team.
Right on. So this is going to cover kind of what went down the week before last. So specifically the testimony before the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage, who I'm just going to probably end up calling the Heritage Committee, just for context, everyone. That being said, first things first, I do want to give a shout out to the Holy Gael, who provided me with my shirt for this evening. And
Love it.
Right.
Love it.
So thank you, Holy Gael. So let's get down to the testimony I think we had all been waiting for. So right off the bat, it was the Thursday before last that the team was set to testify before the government. And just a few hours before Christine Sinclair, Janine Beckie, Quinn, and Sophie Schmidt were going to take their seats before the Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage, who else but Canada Soccer decided to put out a statement outlining their proposed collective bargaining agreement that they had offered to the men's and women's national teams. Guys, testimony had not even started. Did you find that timing a little bit suspect?
Yeah, it was.
Sketchy. It's just
very sketchy.
Yeah. But nonetheless, obviously, the show must go on. So Janine Beckie started off with some opening remarks where she kind of just reminded the committee of how the women's national team found itself in such tense relations with their own federation, after which the members of parliament began a Q&A session with the individual players. And right off the bat, one of the first questions that was asked, we learned that there was a hot line said about Christine Sinclair. So Christine Sinclair indicated that she had been actually the person to present kind of the team's concerns and what they were asking of the federation to Canada Soccer, after which then President Nick Bontis dropped the line, "What was it Christine was bitching about?" Like, the disrespect. What? He said that.
Wow.
According to Christine Sinclair, so I guess I should say he is alleged to have said that. Can you even with the disrespect?
He's not here anymore, at least that.
Well, unfortunately, exactly. Yeah, there's two levels of unfortunate. As Elias said, he is at a higher level now, of course, because he is basically second in command to Victor Montagliani at CONCACAF. And the Canadian women's national team players indicated in their testimony that they do not have much faith in Charmaine Crooks, who has succeeded him as acting president of Canada Soccer. They very much see her as a member of the old guard. And as well, they indicated they haven't actually had any contact with her since she was appointed. So, silence is kind of deafening, right? So just some other it was about a 2-hour session that went on. So of course I will just kind of talk about some of the highlights, I think, of that, because admittedly, some of the questions that were asked by the politicians were like a little bit fluffy. So just sort of for meaty stuff. One of the things that came out was that Quinn discussed kind of the cuts that have been made to the medical staff and the physios and how that has impacted the team. So, Quinn mentioned that the team is having to choose which treatments that they're going to receive, whether it's in camp or in between matches or what have you. So they're not able to be fully cared for if they have a knock or a strain.
That's
or what have you.
Crazy at this level. That's crazy at this level.
It sounds completely like unprofessional. It sounds like it's, a nation that's still developing in soccer very much. So my mind was just blown that the players can't receive 100% of the treatment that they feel they need in order to perform effectively. As well, Quinn said that because the team is having to call up smaller squads, they're not able to do some of the drills like that you would have with a proper scrimmage, or just kind of like you kind of need 2 full teams worth of players to complete. So they're also not able to train as effectively as they have been in previous camps because they're having to adjust their drills based on how many players they're able to call up. So once again, these cuts are clearly having a negative impact on the women's national team, whether it's in their preparation or in their in-between match routines.
There's a World Cup in a few months. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So Sophie Schmidt as well mentioned, and I think I'm going to quote her here because I think it was a really good line that she used. and it was that women are making the national team by chance, not by design, when she was discussing the impact that the cuts to youth programs have had on the federation. So how concerning do you guys think it is that the youth camps are obviously cut to such kind of minimal levels right now?
People don't understand that the youth camps are the lifeblood of your national team. Well established and high level federations, the reason they are so good and they play at such levels so consistently is because their youth programs are funded. There's a reason that the best teams in the world, best out teams in the world, also do really well at these youth tournaments. It's because their youth teams train like professionals. They train with the expectation that they're going to make the national team and then carry on this high standard of play. So if you say that you're only going to be able to train properly once you get to the national team, and even then you may not get the chance to because you might cut your budget even further, then how do you expect a federation with any kind of respect? And it's insane to me that any level of youth development is seen as,
like extra.
optional.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not gravy. That is literally the foundation on which your national team is built. And if you don't have that, first of all, a lot of these people know each other before they get to the national team. They know each other through the youth programs. They know each other, and that's how you start to build familiarity. Because if you just get there as 20, 22, 25-year-olds, and then you get there and then you're supposed to learn how to play with one another. No, you've been playing together since you were 10. You've been playing together since you were literally kids, and you've grown up together in these camps, and you've grown up together training, right? Regardless of what you do on the club side, this is how you grow as a federation. So this omission is nothing if not just ridiculously short-sighted. And you're just assuming that you're going to get another golden generation to just like plop in front of you and you'd be like, all right, cool, we're going to keep the good times rolling. No, that's not how that works. It's diligent and consistent working with youth programs that you cannot forget about, because then you will be stuck with another cycle of people that are not prepared. They're just not ready to play at the level needed to continue at this standard.
Right on. No, exactly. Hady, anything to add?
No, everything was said. It's just unacceptable. We talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Also, unacceptable at this level. We're the second best team of the continent. That's how
not for long.
And we're in the top 5 or top 10 in the world. Like
top 6.
Yeah, tops or like
we're
depending
6th.
on between.
But
what I'm saying
because there's FIFA and there's the other rankings.
Exactly. So it's always we're surely in the top 10 of the world, and we're not putting the effort, and we're not helping that team grow, and we're not helping that team stay at that level. And I'm afraid of the future for the future of the Canadian soccer, not only the women's but the men's too.
Very much. And of course, as well, with the statement being released by Canada Soccer just before the session was set to begin, the players were asked how they felt about that. And Janine Becky represented on that particular question, and she said that they felt very disrespected because some of the terms that Canada Soccer had published were meant to stay private. And of course, this deal has not yet been agreed to, has not yet been accepted, and has certainly not yet been ratified. So the fact that some of their private negotiations had kind of been published for the whole world to see is once again something that they thought was in very poor taste. Any thoughts on how badly this could end up backfiring for Canada Soccer, given that they kind of reneged on their willingness to keep stuff private?
Honestly, at this point, nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing surprises me anymore. And you know what? Yeah. I think it's time for I don't know who, because the FIFA, I'm not really sure they can do anything, but this should go to legal. Like there should be lawyers involved. There should be something, because this is not normal. This is not normal. The lack of respect that the Canada Soccer is showing to its players is just not human anymore.
It's pretty disgusting.
Exactly. It's not a matter of sports. It's not a matter of soccer anymore. It's a matter of, do you respect that person or do these people or not? And they don't. It's as simple as that.
No, completely agree with you.
Something needs to be done.
Yeah. And speaking of something, so tomorrow, General Secretary, who we recognize from some of the most iconic press conferences in history, Earl Cochrane, as well as two board members, Paul-Claude Berube and Stephanie Giosist, will appear before the same committee that the women's national team players appeared before. Elias, any questions that you hope get asked of those folks tomorrow?
What's going on in your head?
How dare you? Where do you get the nerve? No, in all seriousness, it's difficult to kind of hype myself up when I see the kind of the caliber of the questions being asked of
yeah, they
the
were kind of,
administration and
some of them were,
office.
yeah.
They're very fluffy, and I'd love to see any kind of pressure being administered, right? And again, I'm not one for, be it like congressional hearings or heritage committee hearings, stuff like that. It's very procedural, and you can't be too confrontational and stuff like that. You have to maintain decorum, and you can't turn into like some kind of shouting match, even though I desperately wanted to become one. It's difficult because they're so lawyered up at this point, and they're so unwilling to kind of admit anything.
Yeah.
That I don't think that any kind of question or any line of questioning would yield fruit other than, well, yeah, okay, next question.
Yeah. No, and it is really tricky because FIFA actually can sanction or even suspend federations if there's too much government interference in how the federation conducts itself. So it is a really fine line, I think, that the Canadian government as well has to tread in order to not have the worst of worst case scenarios happen to Canada Soccer, and have them completely shut down or sanctioned so heavily that, it impacts their ability to function even further. But like you said, Elias, I so wish that some really hard questions would be asked of them. I don't necessarily, I kind of wish some other questions had been asked of the players, but again, treading that fine line of avoiding potential sanctions for government interference. So or government influence, however they call it. Sorry. It's tricky. Hady, anything you hope comes out of tomorrow's testimony? Oh my God, I'm so sorry I've taken away your will to carry on.
No, but you know what? It's just unbelievable. I have no words. I have no words of
I know.
What's going on. It's just not normal. And we're still talking about it. This should have been fixed 3 months ago, a year ago, 10 years ago. This is not normal. This is not normal. And I don't think anything's going to happen tomorrow. And that's the sad part of it. Nothing's going to happen. And I don't know what these women are going to have to do in order to win their case in a certain way. And this really frustrates me.
Same
really
here.
Frustrates me.
Yeah, I think Chan summed it up pretty well with his comment. What a mess. Just a shit show. And I can't agree more. So obviously, I think probably next week we'll end up talking about anything that came out of tomorrow's testimony. If, anything revelatory is stated, I'll definitely have an eye on it while I'm working away tomorrow. Sorry, boss. Just in case anything interesting does come out. That's all I had to say on the testimony. But before I switch it back to you, Hady, I did want to just say we got some terrible, horrible, awful news this week out of, again, the Canadian women's national team side of things. It's a couple of days before the NWSL season is set to start. Janine Becky has sadly suffered a torn ACL. So her season is over before it has started, and she's going to miss the World Cup. So wishing her,
That's heartbreaking.
obviously, wishing her a speedy recovery. I can't imagine how devastated she must be to
Yeah,
have picked up that injury.
and it's so tough for Canada. Also, one of their best players will be missing the
Mm-hmm.
World Cup, so it's gonna get tougher and tougher for Beth
And one of their
Friesman
leaders too,
and the
man.
team. Yeah, exactly. One of
Absolutely.
the leaders too, and she could play so many positions too. And I don't know, it's gonna be
Yeah,
tough for her. But maybe hopefully we'll be able to see her on TSN and see her
She was great during
comment
the
yeah,
World Cup.
commenting the World Cup. I think that would be great to at least hear her thoughts, because she has such a beautiful soccer mind, and
hmm
her analysis is always on point. She's really really good,
yeah,
uh, you know, in the media. So at least that. But yeah, it's gonna be tough for the women's national team during the World Cup without her, for sure.
yeah. Really disappointing.
Yeah. So Eve, you keep us posted next week on what
For sure.
happens tomorrow. It's always very interesting to cover that and to discuss that. Talking about the women's national team, CONCACAF unveiled the first W Gold Cup. So I'm just gonna sum it up for you. I'm not gonna take too much time because it's very complicated. So first of all, there's the road to the Gold Cup. So
hmm
just to let you know, so look at the right side of the screen right now, because that's what's really important. The United States already qualified for the group stage of the W Gold Cup by winning the 2022 CONCACAF W Championship and qualifying for the Paris 2024 Summer Olympics. The other team that will qualify also is the winner of the game between Canada and Jamaica. The winner of that game will not only be qualified for the Gold Cup, but also for the Summer Olympics too. So that's going to be sometimes in December. So that's the second team that will qualify. There's also guest teams that are qualified for the group stage two from the CanMNT region: Brazil, Colombia, Argentina, and Paraguay that are qualified. For the rest of the team, there will be 33 nations, not including the United States and Canada, and the winner of Canada and Jamaica. The loser will be included in the 33. That will be split into three groups based on the March 2023 CONCACAF ranking. League A will be three groups of three teams made up of the top 9 ranked teams. League B will be made of the next 12 best ranked teams divided into three groups, and League C will be the rest. League C is not important for the Gold Cup. What's important is League A. So the first teams of each group will qualify for the group stage of the Gold Cup. The second teams of the League A will play a preliminary round against the first teams of the League B. And that's going to be round one. It's going to be the prelims of the Gold Cup, and the winners of those confrontations will qualify for the W Gold Cup. Now, the W Gold Cup will be played from 17th of February 2024 to the March 10th of 2024 in the United States, as usual. And this is how it's going to show. So as you can see, the prelims, like I said, on the left-hand side, the group stage and the knockout stage, to at last get a winner of that. Of course, that will be on the 10th of March 2024. From then on, the teams will continue to prepare for the Paris 2024 Olympics, which will
hmm
begin on July 24th. So that's for the Gold Cup. Exciting tournament, right, Eve?
Yeah. Yeah, interesting for sure. It kind of like, especially with the preliminary stuff, it almost feels like a weird hybrid of Nations League and Gold Cup,
Yeah.
a little bit. But no, always happy to see more competition. Obviously, really excited, particularly to see the CONMEBOL teams being invited, because it is usually just the same couple of nations that kind of rise to the top in CONCACAF. Unfortunately, it's not a particularly balanced federation that we play in. So that's really what excites me the most, is having some variety in the competition, and I hope the W Gold Cup continues to invite other federations to participate.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, Elias. Elias, Eve talked about Canada and the U.S. being the top two teams and not being very exciting, but we did see the rise of the Mexican national team that's becoming better and better, but also the Jamaican national team
Yeah.
that's also doing great. Do you think that those two will be able to surpass Canada with everything that's going on, and Canada, suffering from the decisions of Canada Soccer? Are they a threat to Canadian soccer?
I don't know if threat is the right word. Again, in tournaments like this and for silverware, then all of a sudden anything is possible. I
Mm-hmm.
think that Canada Soccer still has an incredibly strong squad, and I think that this will only serve to bring the team closer together. Again, the She Believes Cup was difficult, and there were complications throughout that competition. But I think that ultimately, um,
Someone's
I
calling
think
you, I think,
ultimately it's going
Elias.
to become.
You
I
okay?
think ultimately, yeah, is that on my end? It was weird.
I don't know.
Um,
I don't know.
I think I think ultimately it's still Canada and the U.S. are still top dogs.
Nah, I
But
think so
it's nice
too.
to see that other
Mm-hmm.
other federations are showing significant movement, and it's not just like,
Yeah.
yeah, they're a little bit better. It's like, no, these are noticeable and monster steps they're taking. So
Yeah.
it's really nice to see just how quickly they're getting better, and it's not just like, oh yeah, maybe in like 2 or 3 World Cup cycles they can be competitive. It's like, no, it's like
No?
they're almost there. So it's very promising for the confederation, for the entire confederation, to see
Yeah.
that their teams are making these improvements, and maybe they'll treat it with a little bit more respect, and take it a lot more treat it with the seriousness it deserves and commands,
Mm-hmm.
because this tournament is going to be very exciting, and I think it promises a lot of really high quality soccer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting. As such, also the World Cup, of course, that will be a tournament that we will cover here on the Ball This Round, like we always do. We will follow the women's national team, the men's national team, and all the national teams, teams that are playing, international tournaments. Always very interesting, and always nice to see Canadian soccer grow. Hopefully, we will continue on growing in the future. Talking about growing, the
Yeah.
Canada soccer team, the men's national team, are getting ready for the Nations League. So the CONCACAF Nations League. Just to remind our listeners, so Canada is right now in Group C, uh, behind Honduras. So second place, Honduras is first, but played one more game than Canada. Canada is second with 3 points, Honduras with 6 points, and Curacao with 3 points. Uh, this is a very important window because it's the last two games of the CONCACAF Nations League, with Canada playing their first game against Curacao on the 25th of March, and then playing against Honduras on the 28th of March, so 3 days later. John Herdman unveiled his squad with quite a few surprises,
Yeah.
in my opinion. So I'm just gonna name the squad that was chosen by John Herdman. So Milan Borjan, Tom McGill, and Dane Sinclair as the three goalkeepers. Defenders: Samuel Adekugbe, Derek Cornelius, Alistair Johnston, Scott Kennedy, Richie Larea, Kamal Miller, Steven Vittoria, and Dominic Zator. In midfield: Steven Estacio, Atiba Hutchinson, Mark Anthony Kay, Ishmael Kone, Victor Luturi, and Jonathan Osorio. And as forwards, we have Ayo Akinola, Charles Andreas Brem, Tejan Buchanan, Jonathan David, Alfonso Davies, and Kyle Laren. Elias, what did surprise you in that squad? Any inclusion that surprised you? Any exclusions that surprised you? So tell me all about it.
I wasn't too surprised. I mean, the biggest surprise is obviously, when you start working your way down, you see the goalies first. You don't see someone like Maxime Crépeau or James Matemis, who were two of the most prominently used in the build up to the World Cup, and then you
Mm-hmm.
remember that both of them are injured. Um, I think there's a nice mix of established and a couple experiments. I was hoping to see maybe a few more uh first time caps, first time call ups, just to see, kind of experiment with some of the youth players while also having, your established members and your starting or your top, say, 50 players, and then maybe a couple
Yeah.
more experiments. But all in all, I mean, there's no real surprise omissions for me. I think that, uh, from the MLS side, at least from the CF Montreal side, a lot of the players have either, struggled with injury or just, maybe not had as much exposure as they'd liked. But all in all, I think this is a squad that is more than good enough to get the job done and take top spot in the Nations League.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably given that these are competitive matches, maybe that's why we're not seeing quite as much experimentation from John Herdman. In the Gold Cup, where it's a little bit of a wider net, especially with like the early stages of the matches, and maybe that's when we can see a little bit more because as well the European players will be out of season at that time, and we typically see just some different names. So I'm kind of riding on that to show more of that experimentation that you're looking for, Elias. Because yeah, I feel pretty similarly to you. I'm just stealing your thunder here, Hady, and taking over. Sorry. I am beyond pumped to see Victor Latourie get a call. He obviously is another CPL success story. He moved to Ross County in the Scottish Premier League, however we call it. Sorry, my bad. And he is a pretty regular starter with them. So really, really happy to see him get the nod. Kind of thought he came a little bit out of nowhere. So for me, that was probably the name I was happiest to see on the sheet.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know anything about Victor Latourie, so I'm just not gonna lie and say that I know him. So I don't know him. There are some players that for me, I'm not gonna say shouldn't be there, but are question marks in my opinion. Charlie Andreas Brim is one that's a
John Herdman,
question
though,
mark.
is really high on him.
Yeah, he is. He is. But I would have liked to see Theo Corbiano come back. I don't know if he's injured or not, but I think he was pretty good when he was called upon. You do have quite a few Canadian players that are playing in the MLS that could be called up. Jacob Schaffelberg with Nashville is having a great start of the season.
Yeah, we saw that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's someone that I would have liked to see in the squad.
Yeah.
I understand. I just don't understand why we look a lot at European soccer and not enough in MLS, but also in the Canadian Premier League. And the best example of that is Dominic Zator. He was one of the best center backs in the Canadian Premier League since 2019, and he was never looked at by the Canadian national team. He's now 28, so he started with Cavalry FC in 2019. He was one of the best. He went to York United. He was one of the best, and then he decided to go to Korona Kielce in Poland. And you know what? In the Polish league, it's not one of the greatest leagues in the world. I'm pretty sure that it's a lot better than the Canadian Premier League, but still, he was here in our country and we didn't call him up, and now we're calling him up. I'm happy he's getting the nod. I'm happy that we're going to be able to see him with the national team because he's a great player. He's a very, very good player. Yeah. I don't think he's the caliber. He's not going to be a starter in that team, but I think he deserves to be in the rotation, just as Joel Waterman. That's also not here, by the way. So I don't know. I'm not really sure if that's the right way to go, but I agree with both of you that we have more than enough talent in that team to finish on top of that group in the Nations League. It's going to be 2 tough games against Curacao and Honduras. We need to win them all in order to qualify because only the first of the group will qualify for the next round. So
exactly.
So yeah, interesting, but I'm kind of not very happy of the squad that was chosen by John Herdman, in my opinion.
Fair enough.
So yeah, so of course we're gonna cover the national team next week. Obviously, it will be we're gonna cover for sure the team. We're gonna discuss mostly the game that will be played on Saturday. And then we'll see. We'll see. I think the following week we'll discuss a second game also because, of course, we won't have any MLS action during in the next 10 days, maybe. So that's it for the Canadian men's national team. Moving on, I think last but not least is the social media. So let's look at this segment.
It's not clicking. I'm so sorry.
No worries. Elias, you're
yes.
the man.
Yes, but social media time. Oh.
Indeed. So let me rack up your first tweet.
All right, yes. So this could have been a pushcast contender right away. It's from Pablo Ortiz. This is some really cool shots from Mason Toy's half volley that we so meticulously picked apart. What does it say? Again, Eve, you very clearly made your stance about this.
I'm so sorry. That was like the meanest thing I said on this podcast.
What does it say about a player's confidence, Hady, when they try something like that as their first attempt on goal, like 10 minutes into the game?
Oh, he really wants to have a good season. And does he put too much pressure on himself? And that's what Wilfried Nancy used to say when talking about Mason Toy. Maybe, but I think that he seems a lot more relaxed this year. It's the first time, and don't forget that it's his first start of the season. So hopefully we'll get a second start to be able to judge him a bit more.
Do you think he tried to do too much too quickly though, or is it kind of a case of this is your first chance, make it count now?
No, I don't think he. Did you think that he tried to do too much? I didn't see.
I think there were moments where he maybe forced the play a little bit, but there were some other moments where he let the play come to him, and they were nice. But I still think he has to settle into his rhythm and kind of find.
He needs to score a goal.
First and foremost, he needs to score a goal. That's absolutely true. But I think that he also has to find his rhythm, and that is challenging when you get minutes, once in a blue moon.
Yeah, we'll see what's gonna happen. But I found him interesting in that game, so hopefully we'll see it again in the following games. So next tweet is from Quentin Parisis.
This is from Quentin Parisis. This is Joey Saputo. This is in French. Joey Saputo went to give a hug to Hernan Osada at the end of the game. At the end of quite a crazy game. Given how the relationship with the last coach ended, Eve, what is this just relief of two people that are so invested, or is this something a bit more?
I mean, Joey Saputo is a very emotional owner. I think we know that. He is deeply emotionally invested in this team. Unfortunately, sometimes it does not come out as well as it should. So overall, I'm not reading too much into this. I think it was, obviously two very relieved gentlemen on the side of the pitch to have gotten that last gasp win. Kind of like Chan says, let's see how long it will last, because we know when Joey's not satisfied, he tends to make his feelings known.
And Osada very clearly has kind of this fiery, passionate side. Do you anticipate maybe some butting of heads should these two maybe not end up on the same page at some point?
Of course.
I would expect no less. Knowing this Montreal team, I would I would be disappointed almost.
No, I agree with Eve. I just want to say a hi to Quentin Parisis. He's the editor in chief of Quebec Soccer. Very nice magazine. If you read French, go read it. Very interesting. The last issue just came out a few days ago with an interview of Hernando Sara, of Han Herrera. Very good articles in there. So feel free to go. To go read. It's free, so you just need to register, and it's free. So always nice to read content on Canadian soccer. So good job on Quentin, doing that. So next tweet.
Yes, next one is from Michel Tessier. This again is in French, but we arrived and parked at 6:30 at Village Olympique, and it took an hour just to get into the car with only one opening through the metro. It is unacceptable in 2023 and very dangerous for general security. Edzi, this is the city that wanted to host a World Cup game and is now in the running for hosting an NFL game.
They are?
What they are, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have a candidacy for hosting an NFL game. So what has this shown you with regards to the facilities and the capability to host a large scale event that 23,000 people almost shut down the entire stadium?
You know what? I arrived a bit late yesterday. When I say late, it's usually I'm there around 5:30, so 2 hours before the beginning of the beginning of the game. But yesterday, I think I arrived around 6:15 or 6:20. It was very smooth. Now I am a Bank of Montreal card holder, so it's I can go through the Bank of Montreal gates, so it goes very quick. By the way, but no, it wasn't hard at all. It was very simple, and for the first time ever, you were able to come into the stadium from the second floor, like from the ground. You didn't need to go into the metro to go from inside like it was in the previous years. So I didn't find that. Now, of course, it looks like it looks like a lot of people had those problems, but I didn't find it difficult. Now, of course, if you're someone that comes at 7:15 expecting to go into a game at 7:30, yeah, you're not going to be able to watch the game at 7:30. It's not the case of Michel. I understand that, but there's a lot of people that are a bit last minute also and complain afterwards. So I don't know. I would take it with a grain of salt. But in this instance, I don't know why there was so much much traffic at that time at 6:30. I didn't see that at 6:15.
Well, disappointing though. Thankfully, there's only one match at the Big O this year, so we won't have to.
Yeah.
Hopefully, Stade Saputo will have all the gates open and everything like that in a timely manner. I mean, they always did last year and everything. So
Stade Saputo just organizationally is also just much better than Olympic Stadium.
Well, yeah, I mean, smaller facility, obviously, so definitely a lot easier.
Yeah. So moving on, fourth tweet, and it's from Armin Dakan.
Yeah, this is perception versus reality. So this is the perception that all MLS talent is clear of CPL. When in reality, there is a significant overlap. And I think this graphic
I like that.
Is a very nice indication of just where the two leagues are at, and that talent and that gap will shrink even more. That overlap will increase, which is what you want to see. Eve, at what point do you think that overlap will become so significant that promotion relegation is genuinely on the table?
Oh my god,
and
don't even.
Again, it is a pipe dream, but
I know.
In terms of it logistically happening is a pipe dream. But in terms of quality, how long do you think before that's a feasible thing? And how long do you think before CPL teams are genuine, contenders and favorites? For example, a Canadian championship.
Honestly, I gotta say they are seeing, to me, generally exponential growth in talent. And, we continue to see CPL players either move to MLS and find success there, or even move abroad, like the case of Victor Loturi, who has now managed to segue his CPL career into not only a European career, but also national team recognition, which I think is undoubtedly the dream for most players who play in the CPL. So, I mean, I'm not I don't have a crystal ball, definitely. But I'm thinking, honestly, if they continue growing at the rate that they're growing, I'm thinking it's going to be sooner rather than later. I'm thinking 10, 15 years, we could be seeing a close enough overlap to really have them challenge. Let's not forget that Forge scored at the Azteca. Just a little, last year. Exactly. David Choignard of all people.
Do you think if more CPL players got national team recognition, it would help keep talent in-house?
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course, for sure.
Absolutely, 100%. And we are seeing ex-CPL players. We have seen on occasion 1 or 2 CPL players called up. I think we saw Mardijic called up in the past, for kind of a January camp. But I expect to see it become more of a thing as CPL continues to grow, provided, I guess, that all of this headache with Canada Soccer and CSB does not negatively impact the growth of CPL, because admittedly they are linked pretty closely. Yeah. And I believe that was it for our tweets for this evening.
No, there's one last.
No, there is one.
Yeah.
There's one final tweet. Yes, this is from Tristan D'Amour, very good friend. A good candidate for this Windows edition of most interesting Canadian massage team call-up is Tom McGill, goalkeeper from the Brighton Academy since he was 14. He's currently on their U23 team in the Premier League 2. The most interesting part is he played with the U17s and the U20s for England. Mm-hmm. How big of a get, Adi, is this for the Canadian team, which is trying to attract Canadian talent that has declared or may be in the running to declare for other countries, especially countries of the stature of England?
Yeah. It's a big... I'm always afraid of those players that have played at the U17 level, U20 level, because...
It's close.
It's not close. It's just that... It's just that at times, the national team coach of the U17 and U20, he's trying to pick the best players, but a lot of clubs refuse the call-ups because, it's U17 and U20. It's not official FIFA games and everything. Mm-hmm. So they end up choosing players that are not that good also at that point. So I'm not going to say it's the case for McGill, but I'm not jumping through the roof saying, yes, we did it, in a certain way. But hopefully we'll be able to see him on the pitch, because I'm not going to be able to, I don't know anything about him.
No, me neither.
So, I want to see him on the pitch. I want to see if he's better. Before saying that it's a good catch or not. We've seen some players being called up and not being at the right level. So I'm not, again, I have a problem with getting someone from Europe, from a Premier League side and in their youth team of a Premier League side, and saying that, yes, we did it. I have a problem with that, because for me, I want to promote Canadian soccer. I want to be able to promote, Canadian Premier League. I want to be able to promote the MLS, our local soccer. That's a lot more important for me, unless we have a real gem. And then, yes, of course, please go and get him for sure. So hopefully it's the case for McGill, but I want to be able to see him on the pitch before judging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I'm a bit harsh. But yeah,
so good, we're allowed to be harsh.
It's a good point, because it's worth noting that the England U17s and the U20s are notoriously successful in Europe, and do usually end up with some pretty good results. So if he does end up growing and evolving in the Canadian Federation, it's nice to have someone with winning experience and winning mentality. Should that
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that carries over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
see.
see. We'll see if it's gonna happen. But you know what? Good luck to everybody that was chosen by John Herdman, and hopefully we'll see 2 wins. I doubt that we'll see McGill get a start in
Yeah.
those 2 games because it's very important for us to win them, and I don't think he's gonna try him right now.
That would
It's
shock
mostly
me.
it's mostly for him to get a feel of what the Canadian
Mhm.
national team is and what a Canadian national team camp is, and get to know the guys in the locker room and such. So we'll see what it gives. So that's it, I think, for social media. Thanks a lot, Elias.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your work. And I think that's it also for the show. I just want to take the time today to thank all the contributors that have helped us during these last 120 episodes, 123 episodes. First of all, the Can Football Club for giving us the audio platform. If you are listening to the audio podcast, it's because of the Can Football Club that is lending us their platform in order to put the audio episode there. I also want to thank Justine, who made our branding. So the ball is round logo, as you can see on our Twitter page and also on our StreamYard. And of course, I want to thank also Arash Pictures that gave us those. You see the Kyoto picture at the back of the stream, and it's important because he has given us a lot of pictures in the last few episodes. So thanks a lot to all of them, and for all the listeners. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for being here and being loyal to us. If you do want, we do have a Patreon page. So if you would want to help us, you want to help us grow the project, please feel free to go register and to help us out so we can grow the product a bit more. That's it for today. Thanks a lot for listening, and see you next week for another episode of The Ball is Round.